home. And that was like my first song out of the gate that like really garnered attention. And it was like it was a obviously it was a great topic. It was something I was passionate about because it affected like my friends and family. And so yeah, from then I just jumped back in it. I did that. I started doing shows again. Um, and yeah, I mean, here we are today. I dropped another album in 2009, October of 2009, called Before I Turned 30. And that's done really well. I dropped this.
I'm sorry, 2019?
Yeah, I'm sorry, 2019, yeah. And then in January 2020, I dropped a single called Cobra Kai with rapper Ritz. He used to be signed to Tech Nine and Strange Music Group. So I dropped a single. He was on the intro of that. That song has done close to 200,000 streams since January. And I mean, it does about 1,000 streams a day. So I expect by the end of next year, that thing will probably be close to 1 million streams. And I've dropped multiple singles since then as well. I think I've dropped like 5 or 6 singles in 2020. Yeah, so you know now, we moved out to Highland from Grand Blanc a couple years ago, and I like built a home studio in my basement, and so now I'm doing music all the time. But yeah, so the long version, that's how I became Shemy.
Okay. So I have a few follow-up questions. I want you to take me back to fifth grade when you did that rap, when you were running for president. What influenced you to do that as a rap, if you can
Um,
remember? And can you remember any of that rap or any of the raps you rapped when you were running for president?
yeah, I can. So I can remember one line from it. It was uh, what. Yeah, so my name's Nick Shems. I'm the rapping kid. If you vote for me, you'll be glad you did. And
Right.
that's what, yeah. So that's about the only thing I remember from it. Um, yeah, what influenced me though? So I always like when my parents divorced, I started writing poetry as a way to just vent, I guess, sort of therapy or whatever. And that just once I like heard hip hop music and whatever, I realized that I could put that over a beat, and I could do poetry over a beat, and naturally I was good at it. And so I guess I recognized that as early as 10 years old, and so that's kind of what motivated me to do it.
And I'm sorry, your parents divorced when you were how old?
They divorced when I was 5.
5 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you said that the flow has always come naturally to you. Could you define flow?
Yeah, so to me flow is it is the way. Let me look at this really quick because I thought it out earlier, and I wrote it down. So let me see what I wrote here. Yeah. So to flow is to me is like how well you deliver your lyrics and convey your message. Yeah, how well you deliver your lyrics and how well you convey your message. Um, Obviously there's different kinds of flows, obviously different some people call flow style. I think that it's such a like flow is such a broad term, and it can mean something different to so many people, but to me the flow is how well you convey your message.
And you mentioned that at one point you found your sound in 2008. Can you talk about how you found that your sound?
Yeah, so when I found my sound, it was, a lot of rappers have a tendency to mimic artists that they grew up on. So their music probably doesn't embody who they are as a person. When I say I found my sound, what I mean by that is the music I was making was me. It wasn't me imitating the Dayton family, which I did early on. And finding my sound was important because that's when you really connect with your audience, when people know who you are through your music. Obviously me and Ira and Raheem, we grew up differently, so me imitating them or their sound or what they were doing, it just wasn't going to cut it. So when I became 17, 18, I found my sound and realized that I had a story to tell too, and it was going to be appealing to people.
Could you describe your sound so that if we heard it, we would recognize it?
Um, yeah, I would say it's a good question. Um, how would I describe it? It's so funny because, like, I mean, people have always told me that I don't sound like anybody else, and so I should have I should be able to describe it. Uh, I think my sound embodies hunger and struggle. Um, that's the best way I know how to describe it outside of saying something like, well, when I especially nowadays, I take bits and pieces from all genres of music. I don't really box myself in. Um, People nowadays compare me to artists like Mike Posner, Bryce Vine. Um, I get a lot of Mike Posner, Bryce Vine. I get a lot of Drake comparisons on certain songs. So, but yeah, I would say hunger. I would say my style embodies hunger and struggle. That's what I would say. Hunger and struggle, whether it's a hunger for success or me portraying my struggle. Like a lot of my songs will be me obviously talking about the past, like about the things I explained to you initially, and then or my hunger to obtain a level of success that I think is like the pinnacle or the standard. Of where I'm trying to be. But a lot of it is just really like life related. Like, nowadays I'm 30, I have a 2-year-old, I have a wife. So my experiences, they really shape my music. So I guess another way outside of hunger and struggle, a way to describe my sound, would be it's just Shemy. I mean, that's the only way I know how to describe it. I don't get a lot of outside influence from anything else other than what I'm living and what I'm doing.
So you describe flow as the ability to deliver
Mhm.
rhymes or music. Can you give me an example of a song where you really like your musical flow?
Yeah, so I think a great example of that is again, as humbly as possible, all of them. But I think a great example of that is Home, and reason being is because that and I don't know if you got a chance to listen to that song or not. Did you? Okay, so the message is important in that song, one, and my rapid, especially in the first verse, my rapid fire rapping on that, it helps keep the listener's attention. And Damon McKenzie, the guy who's singing on the hook with it, or hook of it with me, he, like, when I was recording it, he would point out little things, like he's like, I like the tongue roll on when you said my friends and family go living in hell. He's like, I like how you just go from family to living. He's like, I don't know, it's like it has a cool tongue roll to it. So like I think that's a good example. Like the fact that he could pick up on that, and he's not a rapper by any means, he's a rocker, and the fact that he could like pick up on that, and that impressed him. I think that's why that song is a good example of how the flow helped convey the message and keep the listener's attention.
So you gave me a list of rappers from Flint that you like.
Mhm.
Who of those rappers who you provided are your favorites?
um let me look at the list again. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing this, that you had asked me to order them.
No worries. That was
Yeah.
just a little while ago.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So I just I hate I hate putting myself first, but I would say number one to me is going to stay Bootleg. Or excuse me, number one to me is Bootleg. Number 2 to me is John Connor. I'm gonna put myself at number 3. Um, Number 4, MC Breed. Number 5, Cliff Mack. Number 6 is This Life We Lead. I would say, and then 7, Jeff Sky. 8, Troy Garland. And then 9, Xavier Randall. And 10, David Aaron. But you know, I said I was going to take someone off and put Billy on there. He really deserves to be on there because he really deserves to be on there. Have you ever heard Billy Smokes at all?
I have not.
He did an album called Filthy Flint Money back in the day with Matt Hinkle. And obviously, you know, Matt Hinkle's the, you know, founding father of the Dayton family. They did it, like, he had a label at the time, Dope Dayton Ave Records. And Billy had just came home from prison, and he just came right out of the gate with Filthy Flint Money, was killing it. He went out to New York, and at the time, the A&R from Murder Inc. said, like, I would think that, like, he was from New York. Like, I think he's, like, was, like, right around the corner from me. Like, he's super dope. Billy deserves to be on that list. And I argue, like, debatably would put Billy at number 1 over Bootleg. So let's actually put Billy at number 1. I don't want to make this difficult for you, but let's put Billy at number 1, Bootleg at number 2, and then everyone else, let's just move them down a spot.
Sounds good. So why Billy and Bootleg and John Connor?
So, Billy he doesn't rap anymore, which sometimes pisses me off, but I understand why he doesn't. He moved away, and he actually runs a tattoo business now. But anyways, Billy took Bootleg style and refined it, I guess is the best way to explain it. Billy was like the epitome to me of Flint sound, because he took something like so something that Bootleg and like Shoestring and them did early on, and you know, I know that Shoestring's not on that list, and that's for various reasons, but what Bootleg and them did well as a collaborative group early on is they kind of like defined a sound that was like strictly in Flint. It embodied that hunger I was talking about, that struggle. It was gritty. And it took parts of like to make that grittiness, it took parts of like what was going on in Detroit and like the horrorcore scene, but like they took that and they were able to make it, and like you'll see that with like different collabs they did with like Esham and artists throughout the years, but like what they did is they refined that into a gangster rap that was specific to the city. So what Billy did is Billy came in and Billy took that gangster rap that was specific to the city, and he added aspects from down south. He added aspects from the East Coast, aspects from the West Coast. And so he was able to take genres from all style of music throughout the country and put that in his music. So like while that Flint sound was still there, it was going to resonate in different markets throughout the country. That's why Billy, to me, is the best. And not to mention, Billy focused more where like Bootleg didn't. Billy focused more on punchlines and just so many quotables today for days. I mean, Filthy Flint Money is just probably my favorite album out of Flint that's ever dropped. It's a great album. Yeah, I mean, just so many quotables. So that's what it was for me for Billy. Bootleg was like a spin-off of Tupac. Like back in the day, I just remember so many people like making that comparison, and I heard it when I got older. Like the way to like it was their voice and their style, but also too like like the way he conveyed his message and spoke for the culture and the community. That's what I really liked about Bootleg. But yeah. So anyways, The reason I put Billy over Bootleg, and I have so much respect for Bootleg, but is because Billy was able to take that style and refine it, and I don't want to say into something better, but something more modern, I guess.
So you said you took elements from the South and the West Coast. What do you mean by that?
You heard it mostly in his production, but so like sometimes East Coast rappers, they won't necessarily rhyme. And actually, I think like a good somebody who was like really embodied that was actually Troy Garland. And Troy one time said in one of his raps, he said, and it was on Billy's album, and he said, "I don't even rhyme, just coast to coast lines," um, and that was true. Troy like rarely ended a verse with rhyming the word that he did before, and he picked that up on the East Coast from the East Coast because Troy really looked up to guys like Jay-Z and stuff. And so like that track that Troy's on Billy's album was like super East Coast sounding, and Troy obviously picked that up, and that's why I said that in that line. But as far as like down south too, like a lot of down south people, what they do is like on their hooks, they'll put like multiple people on the chorus. So like you hear that a lot, like like in Hustle and Flow with that whoop that trick, get 'em. Like there's a bunch of layers on the vocals, and Billy to me was the first one to do that, and that's a total like down south thing. Um, yeah, and so he did that on his album. Um, the ad libs on Billy's album are total down south things. When I say West Coast, most of that was in his production, and those were like synths and stuff that were popularized in West Coast music. So um, between his production and just different ways that he like layered his vocals and stuff. Yeah.
So you also mentioned John Connor, and he's more recent. Can you talk about how flow and or rap music has changed since you got into it?
Yeah, so Connor possesses that Flint hunger that all those other artists possess. What Connor does differently than Billy and Bootleg is Connor makes songs that resonate with all demographics. So, not that there's anything wrong with what Billy and Bootleg were doing, but like, well, Billy could be popular in hip hop markets all over the country, and and Bootleg could be popular, and I really confine Bootleg to a demographic. But John, what he does is John is able to like take like samples from like Kings of Leon, or like he'll like throw an acoustic guitar in there. So John and so it's funny, people were so in the Flint scene when I remember when I was probably in 7th grade, and John had that's when Demo was actually in the Genesee Valley Mall. John had a an album, and I wish I could remember what it was called, but they were giving it out for free at Demo when you checked out, and that was the first I'd heard about him. And people in the city never gave John his credit, and reason being back then, and reason being was because they were so confined to that Flint sound that Dayton Family and them had basically specified as the Flint sound. Like they were really like into the gangster rap, and I don't think people were ready to evolve yet in Flint. John was way ahead of his time, so John had evolved, and his sound, yeah, he just like he incorporated sounds from everywhere. I mean, he'd use the acoustic guitar, he'd use samples from rocks, he'd use samples from rockers. And another thing that John did that Billy and Bootleg and them didn't do is he produced his own music. Yeah, so that's why. So John is just an all-around great artist.
So now I want to switch to mental flow. Can you talk about how you get into, I guess, the zone where you're creating your music and where that comes from?
Yeah, so I think to get into the mental zone, you really have to one be like feeling yourself, and number two, you have to be passionate about what you're about to talk about. So like one of the reasons I never dropped music a lot of times over the years is because I just didn't have anything to say. And if I don't have anything to say, then I'm not going to force it. And I think like if you were to go back and like listen to like Look What I Came From, or like you were to now listen to all the singles I dropped in 2020, you would see and say like, oh, like I know what he means by that, because every single one of these songs could be a whole body of work, and like I probably wouldn't skip over this song or whatever, because when I'm making a record, like first of all, my aim is to make a song that has replay value. And so yeah, I mean, in order to get in the zone, I have to be passionate enough about what I'm about to talk about. And as soon as if I know early on, like I'll start writing, I can get through the whole verse and then I'll know if I want to continue or not. I throw so many tracks away, strictly because I don't think they'll have replay value. Um, yeah, so I guess mental flow, can be, yeah, I don't know. I guess mental flow is like can kind of be compared to like being, I don't know. I don't want to say egotistical, but like I feel like mental flow and your ego go hand in hand. Um, in a sense that when you're in the zone, like you got some shit to say type thing. And that it's gonna resonate with people, and it's gonna sound good. That's when I'm really in my zone. I will write sometimes when I'm not in my zone. And it never comes out as good as it does as when I'm, feeling it from the beginning. Like Home, as soon as I started writing Home, those first few lines, that song was actually initially going to be about mental health. That's why the beginning of the song says, "Judge my heart, not my mind." I was going through some things at that time. And I was like, not mentally like in a super good space, but like my heart was in the right place. So that's why that said that. And then, it ended up being about the Flint water crisis, because I think a lot of like what I was feeling personally was caused by like watching my family and friends go through certain stuff. So it went hand in hand. But yeah, yeah.
So, could you go deeper into what has replay value? Like, what are the characteristics of a song, or
Yeah.
or bars, or lyrics, or yeah.
Yeah. Anything played in C major. No, I'm just kidding. That was it. It's like, I think catchiness plays a big part. Like, so like that's my thing with like a lot of new, like Connor's like new album. Well, no, we won't even go there. Like Eminem, like at like M's new stuff, for example. I think M is like a great rapper. Like Eminem's one of the best rappers ever when it comes to rapping. But and like there's so many guys who like in Flint like that I think are good rappers, but they don't make good songs. So like they didn't make my list. There's plenty of people that I'm like, oh yeah, he's a great rapper. But if you can't make a full song, then you're just not on my list to me. So that's my thing. Like, and this is obviously a personal opinion, like other people who are hip hop heads would be like, well, none of that radio shit, none of that other shit matters. It just matters that so and so can rhyme. Like, I think Royce is a prime example of that. Like Royce the 5'9" is a great rapper. He doesn't necessarily make radio music, and because he doesn't make radio music, there's not a lot of replay value to me in his music. So to have replay value for me, there needs to be a few things. There needs to be catchiness, and you need to be able to play the record for other people. And I think that those other people need to feel the same way you feel, or they at least need to feel something that the record gives. So like replay value is like a general consensus to me. Like, and I feel like that's why certain songs on the radio are popular and certain ones aren't. Like we just know, like there's a general consensus when a song drops. I mean, yeah. And so to me, replay value is something that is going to just resonate with everybody consistently over and over and over again. Like for some reason early on, whole albums had replay value. Like you'd hear that from like T.I.'s King album. That whole album is you can listen to that whole album front to back. Ludacris's album, the one with what's it called? Ludacris Saturday album. What was that album called? Yeah, Word of Mouth. Ludacris Word of Mouth. Front to back, you can play that. 50 Cent. Get Rich or Die Trying. So, anyways, um, if you go back and listen to those songs, you'll be like, damn, T.I. had like 10 singles on that album, or Luda had like the singles are what bring the replay value as far as I'm concerned. It's not the deep cuts, and you need the deep cuts on the album, but um, early on, I think the like people just knew like that in order to succeed in the industry, like you needed the singles, and yeah, that's why those artists have so much longevity. It was because early on, I think they recognized the formula to succeeding was replay value.
So I want to go back to this question. Could you give an overview of how Flint rap, whether it's the scene or the music itself, has changed in the past few decades?
Yeah, I mean, without being considered a boomer, I don't think it's changed for the better. And reason being is because what happened is these new guys coming up, and like there's a lot of exceptions to that. Like Xavier Randall's only 21, and he just dropped an album called Cheers, or an EP called Cheers. And I would think that Xavier was an old school hip hop head. But what I like about Xavier is that he's able to keep it's the replay value. He's able to keep your attention um, while rapping like a Joey Badass or somebody like that. Um, so I like that. A lot of these new guys, what they're doing is drug culture has just infiltrated like rap music more so than ever. Like, you know, back in the day when you guys had like Tupac and stuff, like Pac was never about that. He recognized like he recognized how like drugs destroyed the culture, and was, you know, hitting inner city communities and making things bad. You know, nowadays you have artists that you know, popularize it. So of course, you know, when shit's trendy and kids aren't, you know, kids jump onto trends. Like my wife is she's a high school teacher, and the stuff people like, they're like, people are wild. Like people think that T Grizzly is better than Jay-Z, and that's blasphemy. And but like that's what it is. Like this, so you got guys from Detroit, and Detroit has their own sound in itself. But what I don't like about Flint is we used to have our own sound. Now Flint rappers are basically just replicating Detroit sound, that offbeat sound, that offbeat, you know, high pouring up off lean sound. They're not, they can't stay on beat. They can't stay in the pocket if their life depended on it. And I don't like that. But that is popular. Those guys in Flint who rap like that are doing the most views on YouTube. So I mean, who's wrong? Is I guess nobody. But you know, what does that say about me? Does that say I'm old as hell? I'm really only 30. No, I think that it just goes to show you how much the culture as a whole has changed. Like, yeah. So I don't think that it's evolved for the better, and that's just my opinion. And the reason is because we don't have an identifying sound anymore. Like you can't listen to a record and be like, oh man, that dude's from Flint. I would say that so many of these guys coming up now, I'd listen to them and I would immediately be like, oh, is he from Detroit? I don't like that.
So you've given me so much of your time, but I do have one question. One last question. Do you battle rap or freestyle?
I used to battle rap when I was younger. That's actually how you know, like when 8 Mile came out, I feel like every rapper wanted to battle rap. But yeah, I mean, like in school coming up, like I would battle rap in the lunch line and stuff all the time. And actually, like back in middle school, I was in the Flint Journal a couple times, and like this was at Grand Blanc. They actually had my the newspaper clippings posted up in the lunchroom, and it was like, it was wild to me. And yeah, so like in the lunchroom, and so like I'd always be like, yeah, like y'all know they got my picture hanging up in here, like who wants to battle? And like I would always battle the whole time. Nowadays I don't battle rap, and the reason being is because there's no there's no like satisfaction in it for me. So I can freestyle sometimes, like if I'm like drinking with people and like a beat comes on, I'll freestyle. And a lot of times, you know, I'll listen to a beat, and whether it's, you know, freestyling a melody or lyrics or whatever, I do that a lot. Like I'll catch myself doing that in the car a lot. Like I'll YouTube a beat, listen to it, and then like I'll freestyle a little bit, and either if I have a hook or something, I'll screenshot the beat on YouTube, come home, and then complete the song, have someone remake the beat, that type of thing. So yeah, I freestyle. As far as battle rapping, it's just I don't see the purpose in it anymore. But like like a lot of people, it's almost like a sport, you know, in the hip hop community. Like a lot of people love battle rap. It's just personally not for me.
All right, Shemy, I've taken up more time
It's
than
all good.
I would. Yeah, and thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to add about mental flow or musical flow?
Um, yeah, I mean, just for musical flow, I guess I just wish more Flint artists would stay on beat. Um, I wish more Flint artists had a defining sound or a defining flow. And again, this isn't I don't want it to come off as like me hating on people, and I know that it probably will, and a lot of people also, you know, will tell me like probably to catch up with the times, but I don't see, excuse me, I don't see the longevity in that music. Um, yeah, that's about it. As far as mental flow goes, it's hard for me to like talk about mental flow because I verbalize everything I'm thinking, and I think that a lot of artists do that. So like if I'm thinking it, I'm gonna verbalize it, and you know, and maybe I just have the wrong definition of mental flow, but um, if I'm in the zone and it's in my head mentally, then it's not going to be too long before I put it on paper, and it's going to translate into actual flow, if that makes sense.
So when you talk about how the musical flow changed in Flint to be kind of unidentifiable, when did that start happening? Which years or which decade?
It started happening within like the last 3 to 4 years. Rappers that like here's the problem. People who had never rapped in their life all of a sudden are able to go into the studio and start rapping, and then it will sound terrible, like raw, it'll sound terrible, but then the producer is able to take it, or the engineer is able to take it, and they're able to like slide the vocals around so like it's kind of on beat, kind of in the pocket, but like slightly off. And actually it's funny, one of the guys who does a lot of like my vocal tuning and editing prior to mixing, I did a song with Xavier Randall, and Xavier was kind of like, he was slightly off beat, but I think it was more of a mistake in his flow. And so when the guy was editing it, he was like, does he want me to put him on beat, or does he want to stay off beat? And I'm like, no, I was like, it's my song, put him on beat. And he's like, the reason I ask is because like a lot of rappers nowadays ask me to slide their vocals off beat a little bit. And that's strictly to try to fit in with that offbeat rapping trend. You don't even really hear it in popular mainstream music. Like the closest that you get to that is like T Grizzly from Detroit. And if it was as good and as great as everyone says it is, then you would hear way more of it in the industry, but you don't. And I think that that's why. But for some reason, in Flint specifically, that sound is doing well right now. Like I don't even want to say the artist name because I don't even, but like he's done like 2 million views on YouTube, and he's posting emails that these A&Rs are reaching out to him um from like Atlantic and stuff, and they're like, I heard the song, it sounds great, let's talk. They know damn well that song doesn't sound great. And the reason they know it doesn't sound great is because these are A&Rs who A&R music for like, you know, who have A&R music for like J. Cole and stuff. So like maybe truthfully they're seeing the trendiness in it, and that's what labels do. Labels capitalize off trends. But the music itself, I don't know how you can listen to something or someone saying like, oh, like I just put a foe about to make a play, that like there's no substance to it, one, and you could kind of save the song if you were on beat, but not having substance and not being on beat, I personally just don't want to hear it. And again, I think that started within the last 3 to 4 years. Hopefully, hopefully I'm just not getting too old. A music teacher told me recently, I submit to playlists a lot of times for my music. I mean, because nowadays artists, I'm getting older, but there's a lot of money to be made in streaming if you build a good streaming base. So a music teacher told me recently, a playlist site classified one of the tracks I just dropped as old school. And I was mind blown. And I'm like, and like I was offended by it at first. And so I posted the website on this forum that I belong to. I posted the song on this forum, and I'm like, And everyone's like, no, this doesn't sound old school to me. This sounds like it sounds like R&B. This sounds like a Kendrick R&B track, whatever. So this music teacher from LA was like, if you want to like send me a private message, he said, I'll tell you why they're calling this old school. And I actually want to read this message to you just because I want you to see what he said. So because he picked it apart like, I don't know. So he said, here's my perspective. He said, I teach high school music technology at a large public school that's pretty diverse. So I make it a point to understand what they're listening to and what they enjoy. I also shown them and given them assignments asking them to describe several rap performances. Some of my students are artists themselves. With that said, he said, your track uses flows and delivery that were prominent pre-2005. He said, I would suggest listening to Polo G, who I've never heard of. No Cap, also have never heard of him. NBA Youngboy, I've heard of. The Baby, I've heard of. Doja Cat, Six Dogs, Rich Brian, Young Pinch, to get more of a feel of what has been successful and innovative over the past few years. And so I told him, I said, I dig that perspective. I did come up on rappers like Jay-Z, Luda. I listened to The Baby and NBA. I try to stay up on current sounds. I said, would you recommend I switch my style up and that would get me further with my music? Do you think there's still a niche for my sound? And he said, please don't think that I'm using the term old school in a derogatory way. I'd never tell someone to switch their sound. Keep doing what you're doing. Fans in 2020 tend to respond to relatability above all, in my experience. So he said, I'm just trying to show you how kids in 2020 recognize the 90s and 2000s influence in your music and would call it old school. So there's that. So all of a sudden I'm old school. Now, to me, old school is completely something different. Apparently to them, they can pick up on the 2005, 2006 influence and whatever. That's fine with me because that's when music was great. So
I hear you. So do you pick your beats or does your producer pick the
yeah,
beats?
I pick all my beats. And then recently I've actually just got into so I never really made a lot of beats. I'm on my debut album, that Look at What I Came From, I only did one beat. And then over the years, beats are expensive and producers tend to charge a lot. So recently I started making my own beats. But yeah, no, I've always picked my beats. Another thing I've gotten into recently is I'm pretty versatile. Like I can jump into the pop lane as well because I can kind of sing somewhat. So recently I linked up with a producer out of Singapore who he did a pop record. He actually wrote a pop record. He sang the pop record and um he's like your singing kind of reminds me of like some like early Nelly or whatever. He was like, I think that you'd sound great on this. So I just did a pop record with him. He wrote it, he picked and produced the beat. So I'm kind of like jumping in different lanes, but if somebody that's the only, like, nobody's ever written a rap for me, but if somebody else like in like the pop genre, if someone writes something or does something and they like how I sound, that's about the only time that I'll take on a song like that. Usually I do pick my own beats. Yeah.
All right, Shemy, you've given me several pages worth of notes here. And you are actually the first person for me to interview for this book project. So so you are really informing me in a lot of ways. And I am going to talk to Bernard Terry in a couple weeks and a few other people that I've lined up so far. But just so you know, the book it takes this is my first book, and it's a lot longer process than I would like, and it may be a year or so before it's actually out. But I'm going to keep in contact with you because I'm sure I'm going to have follow up questions as I
Yeah, no problem.
transcribe and all that. But you are so busy with your life and then your job and then your rap career, and so really, really impressed by everything that you've done and are doing.
Thanks. Yeah, no, nowadays I'm in I finally got my life together and now actually I'm in client services for Chrysler. So I work for a third party claims company and Chrysler's one of our clients. So I've been working from home obviously with everything that's going on and yeah, they keep me busy, but working from home I will say is giving me a lot more time to work on music, thankfully. So I like that. But no, I'm glad I could be a part of this. And I don't, Bernard. Have you talked to Bernard before?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, he's a book himself. So uh, you're gonna get some great information out of him for sure.
Oh yeah, I have lots of. I mean, he could give me the history of
He can.
Flint for
He
sure.
can, and he'll break it down, and I mean, he'll break it down in ways that I couldn't even think of. So I think that yeah, he can give you the history because he's still seeing it. I mean, he's seen he still gets a lot of business. So I love Bernard so much. Excuse me. One thing about BT though is he's always so booked up. And nowadays with the way music is, when you need to stay consistent, and I try to drop something every month. Well, sometimes he's a month out mixing, so I don't get to get as many songs to him as I used to. I have to venture out, and that makes me sad because he's my favorite. He's my favorite sound. I mean, I've had guys who mix Post Malone stuff, mix my records, and I always go back to like I like the way BT like makes me sound. So it kind of makes me sad. But with that being said, I mean he's great, and yeah, he sees it. I just remember being in BT's studio, like where people would, like dope boys, different people in the city would come in and they'd hand him 10 grand cash for projects that that he's working on for him or that was going to be worked on for him. And I'm like the 16-year-old and we didn't have a lot of money. And I'm like, I can't give you that. But like he's nothing about BT. He's always looked out for me. Like he's always said like, BT always told me like something that you got that a lot of these guys around here don't got is he said you're really likable. And he said a lot of these guys, he's like, they do music, he's like, but he's like, I don't like them. So I mean, it's one of those things where he's always like giving me good advice and like told me like kind of where to go. So yeah, BT's the man. Did you get any other artists lined up at all?
Yeah, I have do you know who Brady Gaza is? Gasser. I
Yeah,
interviewed him for a documentary film that I did on MC Breed and on Bootleg. So
yeah,
I'll talk to Bootleg eventually, um, and then I may talk to Shoestring, and then John Connor. I've been trying to get in touch with him. Um, so that's all. That's who I have so far.
yeah. But I know Brady Gaza. He used to do Kettering 94.3 back in the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So him, yeah. So Connor is just hard to get a hold of in general. I've tried to get a hold of him a couple times. I think that he's super focused on since the whole thing with Dre transpired, he's back. He just dropped that album. I think he's just like Connor's probably the guy to ask about mental flow because he's always in his zone when it comes to music. So, and I know he's producing a lot of other artists too. Um, yeah. So Connor's just hard to get a hold of in general. I'm always trying to get a hold of him and I can't. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear ya. I see. Whenever I catch him on Facebook Live, I try to reach out to him, but have just not connected.
if you
I've
got it,
lost
if you have an Instagram, I would DM him on Instagram.
Okay,
Yeah,
I will. Yeah, I will do that then.
that's probably your best bet.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the tip.
No
And
problem. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I really appreciate it. I love the Flint hip hop scene, and it's I like seeing like even though I don't personally like, these young guys, their music doesn't personally resonate with me. I like the attention that it's bringing to the city from the industry, and plus I just love to see people get money off of music. So even though it doesn't resonate with me, I think when I say it hasn't evolved for the better, I think that one of the positive musically, one of the positive things out of it is that there's a lot of attention on Flint and Flint artists right now, and that's going to benefit everybody. So from hip hop heads to lean rappers, whatever, it's definitely going to benefit everyone. Yeah. So I really appreciate you letting me be a part of it. And if you do have any follow up questions, let me know.
all right, you have a good weekend, Shemy.
Thanks. It was nice meeting you.
Likewise.
All right. Bye bye.